Unfortunately, Bitcoin is still headed to 50K. I mean, it really is what it is. And the frustrating part about it is, I want to say necessarily frustrating, but many people have never experienced this before for Bitcoin. Bitcoin not too long ago was at 126,000. We're down nearly 50% in a correction. And a lot of people, especially within the Pump Fund and Solana ecosystem, who only joined when meme coins blew up, have only seen Bitcoin in a period of rallying. They've not seen the true bear market. And many have just seen Bitcoin go from 30, 40,000 all the way up to 126,000. They've not been around in 2022, and they weren't around in 2023 when almost nobody who was around at that point, not a lot of people entering the market, and many people actually leaving, especially after FTX collapsed and everything else that went down with it. And so, unfortunately, we're at a time where a lot of people are somewhat delusional due to not having experience. And so, I think what we're starting to see with this price point of 65K is what happened in spring of 2022. And we're going to talk about what is next for Bitcoin, why I still believe 50K is around the corner, and why I think we have further to fall and how to prepare for it. All that and more in today's video. If you're new here, my name is Alex. Talk about crypto news, crypto passive income. If you enjoy content like that, consider subscribing. You enjoyed this video, smash up the like. Without further ado, let's end the video. The first thing I want to start off with is the weekly chart, because this really gives you a good perspective on a long-term basis. This gives you a bird's eye view, a 40,000 foot view of what is going to happen long term, especially for people that don't necessarily want to day trade, but they're in it for weekly trades. They're there for holding a position for several days at a time, holding positions for some people months at a time. And I think one of the big things that we highlighted, especially when Bitcoin was up here at around this pocket range before it broke down, we're talking about this at a $87,000 Bitcoin. And we talked about the fact that the next levels for Bitcoin were going to be between 60 and 65,000. First is going to be 70. Then we're going to go to 60, 65 range just because of psychological levels. And then on top of that, those are going to be levels that we saw pockets. This is what I talked about as far as a pocket right here, where we saw a lot of sideways trading before a breakout. And I think in many ways, we're going to develop that potentially right now for Bitcoin. And I think this kind of hovering range is going to be something that could potentially hold. But at the same time, it's not a range that I would be extremely overly bullish on and expect a huge rally from. And I think that's the problem, is a lot of people expect this to be a level of support, and all of a sudden we're going to go back to all-time highs. I don't see any world in which we go like this only to go break back up. I don't think there is anything that exists. There's nothing that exists for Bitcoin. I've talked about this multiple times. I talked about it in my last video where I talked about Bitcoin going to 50K when it was sitting at like 75K. It went all the way down to 60K. And I think 60K was a massive correction, but I don't think it's capitulation. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of people don't recognize, and a lot of people psychologically aren't seeing where Bitcoin is headed, because a lot of people think that we are like right here for Bitcoin. This is where people think we are right now. And I think we truly haven't even fully started or completed all of this right now. Because what we saw, this is actually, and ironically, playing out very similarly to this is February 14th of 2022, where we found this level support at the 100-day exponential moving average, and we bounced off of it, right? And this is kind of where we are right now. And unfortunately, it looks like this week we will close below the 200-day exponential moving average, which I would say would be extremely bearish. And in that case, where we saw this candle close, if we zoom in on it, right? When this candle closed below the 100-day moving average, we saw a massive correction. In fact, from that point, we corrected until we found bottom another 50%. And so, you know, a lot of people, and mind you, when we were from all-time highs to that point, we had corrected 50%. So a lot of things are playing out very, very similarly, not exactly because this is on a 200-day, not the 100-day, but a lot of things are playing out exactly as they did in the beginning, the spring of 2022, as they're playing out in the spring of 2026. So we're already at this point down when we peak down here 52%, pretty much the same percentage from prior. But I think we still have another 40%, 30 to 40% at least to go. And this is why I've talked about, I think 50K is going to be the next level of resistance. And that's going to be the next opportunity that I think a good trade on a long position would be amazingly placed. So I want to say exactly at 50K because sometimes it goes down to like 50,200 before it bounces. But in one of the amazing trades, and I talked about this as well, would have been placing a trade at the 60K range because we saw a massive, massive rebound all the way back up to 71,000. And I think something very similarly would happen if Bitcoin even went to 55K. I think we would see a major bounce. If it went to 50K, we would see a massive, massive bounce. And so when you're looking at this, and you're looking at this, mind you, this is on a weekly schedule. This is very, very much long term. You have to look at this as far as opportunities. And we saw this similar correction right here when we broke down. We saw this massive correction where Bitcoin went from, this is here at the bottom, 26.7 all the way up to 32,000, right? So we saw a lot of buying, especially as we kind of got down to this 200-day exponential moving average. And then, eventually broke down below it. And then this is the kind of level where sellers are just exhausted. And then when we saw the reversal was at this point, we're retesting this. And then we go above it, we retest, see if we're going to break below it. We don't. And then we start our rally back up in the beginning of 2023. So I think very similarly, we're going to have something like that for the likes of Bitcoin. I think kind of spring of 2027, we're going, or the end of this year, early next year, we're going to kind of see where sellers are essentially exhausted. Capitulation has occurred to its largest degree. And we have found our bottom. And I think, unfortunately, that is going to probably be, I think there's a potential for it to be below 50,000, but the biggest question is 50,000. We got to get there first. We got to see how Bitcoin bounces. But I think that is where we are. If you're looking at this from a big 40,000 foot view, I think we're headed to 50K. There's a lot of people leave the market and they leave money on the table because they don't take the trades shorting Bitcoin. There's ways to make money buying Bitcoin. There's ways to make money selling Bitcoin. And you lose a lot of the opportunity for, I would say more money is to be made selling Bitcoin because you oftentimes also get paid funding fees for going short. So you can technically sometimes even make more money shorting than you do buying. Obviously, not everybody wants to sell something that they have long-term beliefs in, but that is simply just the case in the market. If you shorted Bitcoin at 69K in 2021, only to sell it and close your position at 15K, you would have made a lot of money. You would have done very well for yourself. Not on top of that, all your funding fees. And so I think one of the things that you have to be willing to accept is things do not look good for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is really, really, it's very frustrating because other assets have been going up. The likes of gold and the likes of silver, other commodities have been going up. The stock market has been going up. Bitcoin has not been going up. And that, I think, has frustrated a lot of people. And a lot of people are saying that Bitcoin has not truly capitulated. It has not gotten to that point where people are simply done. They're willing to sell. They're wanting to move on to something else. They're tired of losing money and they're simply done. We are not there yet for Bitcoin. It simply does not exist right now. There's too many people that are still bullish on the fact that Bitcoin is going to go to all-time highs. There's still people holding on to the idea that the bull market is not over and that somehow a super cycle is going to happen in 2026. And so I think there's a lot of things when you're looking at what is next for Bitcoin. I think 50K is next as the next level. What happens post that? Will 50K be the level of support? I think it could be. I think true capitulation would be sub 50K people would probably get tired around $30,000 to $40,000 Bitcoin. And I think that's truly going to be the worst case scenario. And that, I think, is this level right here. We talked about it as well. We've seen a lot of support resistance in this level. So I think in a worst case scenario, I don't see a sub $20,000 Bitcoin. But I do think in a really, really worst case scenario, we would probably see a pattern similar to this, where a bottom is formed around the 30K range before we go back up in a recovery year. But I think right now we're going to see kind of some of this level. And I think in a worst case scenario, this kind of move, even from this candle rate, we're seeing 26K all the way down to 15K. That's a pretty substantial move. That's another 30%. So it wouldn't surprise me to go from 50K to 30K. That is about a 40% move, something like that. So I think that is very plausible. But the bigger question is, how is the overall market holding up at that point? And that, I think, is the problem. There are some things that are occurring on the macro scale that aren't overly bullish for Bitcoin and other commodities like gold. And so I think that is the bigger problem, on top of the fact that the entire stock market is already at all-time highs, just like it corrected from all-time highs. But gold is still, I mean, look at how gold is still up and has not yet significantly corrected. And so I think when you're taking a look at where gold is, obviously it's down from 5,600. This is just a blow off top, I think, in many ways for gold at 5,600. And it corrected all the way down to 4,400. But right now we're hovering in this level. And I think what is potentially next for the likes of gold is if gold does sell off and actually correct as a cycle commodity, we would probably go back down to this level around 4,400. The problem is Bitcoin is already in a really bad place. Now, if you add to the fact that gold is going to now go through its kind of not necessarily bear market, but go through a true correction, because this was just a massive liquidity event. A lot of people shorts got liquidated or longs got liquidated. There's a lot of negative things, very, very fast movements. But I think long term, this is not a lot of time. This is on a 4-hour scale. If we move this over to a daily chart, I mean, look at how very, very extended gold is. It's been a while since gold actually went back and tested a 100-day moving average, right? So I think there's a good chance that in a true correction, gold needs to go back down to its 200-day exponential moving average, which would be a $4,000 goal. And I think if gold goes back to $4,000, Bitcoin is going to also dump significantly, leading to a drop to 55,000, maybe a drop even to the likes of 50,000. We're already seeing a massive correction in some of the stocks. Apple down 5% just in the last 24 hours. The S&P 500 got hit. A lot of stocks got hit pretty hard today, especially in the tech sector. Obviously, gold very, very similarly traded to the tech sector, the NASDAQ. So I think there's a lot of things, and a lot of people try to identify where we are in the psychology of a market. And I think a lot of people, when you look at the fear and greed index, it's at a 5, which is the worst level things are at. But I think right now, truly, people are more denial than anything. A lot of people are trying to deny the fact, because Bitcoin is still at 65,000. That was the all-time high, or close to the all-time high of 2021. So it's not really down. It's still down, but it's still a significant level considering that was a prior all-time high from 2021, right? So I think people are somewhat still in denial that it may not be the end. Right now, the moment we start breaking down below 60,000, once we get into the 50s, that is when people are going to start to panic, because it's no longer staying at what some people remember as the all-time high for Bitcoin, as a pivotal moment for crypto. And so I think at that point, once we go below 60K and we go to the 50s range, there's going to be a lot of panic, and then there's going to be anger, and then we're going to hit this level of depression right down here. And you can kind of see where this kind of bottoms out here. We retest it, and then you have this rally. And that is exactly what happened for Bitcoin, right? You see this kind of downward, this almost like V-shape, right? You see this depression set in right here, and then you see this rally. There's going to be some disbelief that this rally is just going to be like others, just going to fade off, and then the rally continues. And that I think is what a lot of people aren't prepared for. But the problem is, a lot of people are currently not willing to accept the fact that we are in a true bear market. A lot of people are in denial and aren't willing to accept the fact that Bitcoin is headed lower. And that unfortunately is the problem. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where do you think Bitcoin is headed next? Do you think we're going to go below 50,000 if the market does continue to capitulate? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, smash up a like. Enjoy content like this, consider subscribing. Until next time, guys, stay invested.